Not because Marcus demanded it, but because the man had no choice. Nobody knew yet what that quiet man had been sketching on lunch breaks was worth. Rewind 90 minutes, back to the beginning. Marcus Washington had been cleaning that building for 4 years. 4 years of arriving at 4 in the morning. 4 years of empty offices and the hum of the refrigerators in the break rooms. He'd never been to college. His high school diploma came from a school that didn't have a lab. His mother had cleaned houses. His father had fixed cars. He learned precision and patience in poverty, and he brought both to his work. The job was simple. Mop the tile, empty the bins, wipe the glass, polish the steel. Other janitors rushed through it. Marcus moved like someone who owned the building, not fast. Thorough, every corner got the same attention. Every surface was treated like it mattered. Because Marcus believed it did. He lived in a studio apartment in Queens. He had a daughter in 8th grade. He sent her to a tutor twice a week, using money he'd saved by eating the same lunch, ham sandwich, apple, black coffee, every single day for 3 years. His daughter wanted to be a doctor. That was not negotiable in his mind. Marcus had a ritual no one knew about. On his lunch break, at 1 o'clock, he sat in the stairwell on the 34th floor. And he sketched. Not art. Designs, patterns. He had a notebook, a pen, and a problem he couldn't stop thinking about. For 8 months, he'd been watching the company's cooling systems. The building was always either too cold or too hot. Never in between. The engineers couldn't solve it. The facilities team complained about it in the break room. The waste was enormous. Thousands of dollars a month. Marcus sketched a solution. A simple mechanical modification to the distribution system. A valve arrangement that redirected flow based on temperature gradient, not preset thermostats. He'd learned mechanical principles from YouTube videos, he'd spent $100 on books at used bookstores, and he'd drawn it out over and over until it worked in his mind. He showed no one. Who would he show? Who would listen? Until one afternoon. A Tuesday in March, the CEO of the entire company came down to the 42nd floor. His name was Richard Whitmore, 58 years old. Princeton-Stanford MBA. He was walking the office with the vice president of operations talking about the cooling crisis. Marcus was emptying the bins. He kept his head down. But he heard them talking. And he saw an opening. He approached them. His voice was steady. He said he had an idea about the cooling system. Something that might help. The VP looked away. Whitmore looked at him, truly looked at him, and laughed. "You don't have the education for this. Get back to pushing your broom." That was the moment. That was the line that would echo through everything that came next. Marcus walked back to his bin. He finished his work. He went home. He showed no anger. He didn't quit. He didn't complain to anyone. He went home, kissed his daughter on the forehead, and kept working. But something had shifted. The next day, Marcus made a decision. He was going to patent his idea. He had no idea how to do it. He had no lawyer. He had no engineer to validate it. He had $4,300 in his savings account. He went to the library. He researched patent lawyers. He found a young woman, April Chen, who'd recently started her own practice in Red Hook. She charged $75 an hour. Marcus met with her. He brought his notebook. He explained the mechanism. She sketched it out in technical drawings. She filled out the applications. It took 6 months and cost him $61,800. Nearly all of what he'd saved for his daughter's first year of tutoring gone. But on September 12th, Marcus was holding a patent. Design patent 11,847,293. Temperature regulative valve distribution system. His name. His, not the building's. His. 2 weeks later, he submitted a memo to the company. He wasn't selling them the patent, he was licensing it to them. For 5% of the savings they'd see in the first year. Verifiable savings. Itemized, and they had to implement it within 60 days. Richard Whitmore got the memo on a Monday. He was furious. He called the VP of operations. He said it was blackmail. It was theft of corporate assets. They'd fired people for less. But their lawyers said the same thing twice. They had no claim. Marcus had sketched it on his own time. He'd patented it independently. Every sketch was dated in his personal notebook. The building's security cameras showed him at the vending machine, not at any company equipment. They'd looked at his employment contract. No, it said, nothing about intellectual property. That was his. So they had a choice: reject it and look stupid, or negotiate. They sent their own engineers to validate the system. 3 men, MIT degrees. They studied it for 10 days. And then they came back and said the same thing. It would work. It was elegant. It was efficient. And the savings would be immense. Whitmore called Marcus into his office on a Friday afternoon. Marcus stood in front of the mahogany desk. The man didn't ask him to sit. Whitmore said, "We'll implement it. 1% of first-year savings instead of 5%. Take it or leave it." Marcus had done the math. 1% would be $340,000, maybe $400,000. He said no. Whitmore's face went completely white. Marcus said, "You called my idea stupid. You told me to push my broom. I had to spend my own money, my own time. So the offer is 5%. Or you implement nothing and I license it to your competitors. They'd pay more. But I'm giving you first refusal." Whitmore stood. He pointed at the door. "Security," he said. Now Marcus was escorted out by 2 men in uniforms. He didn't fight it. He'd done what he came to do. Within 2 weeks, Whitmore's board had overruled him. 15% first-year savings was $8.2 million. 5% was $410,000. The board ordered him to sign. On October 14th, Marcus had a check for $410,000. His hands were shaking. He'd never held that kind of money in his life. But that was not the end. A consulting engineer in Baltimore had heard about the system. She licensed the design to 19 industrial facilities, then a manufacturing firm in Ohio, then a chain of hospitals, then an office complex in Singapore. The royalties compounded. By month 18, Marcus had received a total of $47 million. $47 million. The patent had been validated in 6 countries. 3 Fortune 500 companies had reached out wanting to acquire it outright. But there was one moment no one knew about. One moment that mattered. A year after he'd left the building, Marcus got a call. It was the CEO, Richard Whitmore. His voice was different, smaller. Whitmore said, "I have to sell my house. The board has voted to replace me. They found out I tried to suppress your idea. There's a lawsuit coming. My lawyer says I might be facing personal liability." Marcus could have said anything. Instead, he asked, "Do you need anything?" Whitmore didn't answer. Marcus said, "I'm starting a foundation. For students from families like mine. Students without colleges behind them, but with ideas anyway. I need an advisory board. Would you serve?" There was silence. Whitmore said, "Why would you ask me that?" Marcus said, "Because you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing you got it wrong. And I'm not interested in just your money. I'm interested in your change." It was not forgiveness. It was transformation. It was saying, "You matter too much for me to waste energy hating you." The Marcus Washington Foundation for Unaccredited Innovation opened 8 months later. It has funded 43 patents from people without degrees. The median salary increase for patent holders has been $203,000. Whitmore sits on the board. He no longer lives in Manhattan. He works with the foundation full-time. Last year, he took a salary cut to stay. The building on the 42nd floor still runs on Marcus's system. It cost the company $14 million to implement across all their properties. The monthly savings are now $98,000. But Marcus isn't there anymore. He doesn't push a broom. His daughter is in medical school now. She chose to study biomedical engineering instead of pediatrics. She said her father's approach, precise, humble, solving the problem in front of you, was the most important skill a doctor could have. Last month, at a conference in Boston, Marcus and Richard Whitmore sat side by side on a panel called The Price of Arrogance. Whitmore told the story first. He called himself the villain. He didn't minimize it. He didn't ask for sympathy. He said, "I was born with every advantage and still couldn't see value in front of me. That man was born with nothing and saw a solution." Marcus was asked what he'd say to people afraid to speak up. He paused. Then he said something that has become the Foundation's motto now: your broom doesn't define your mind. The part that stays with me isn't the 50 million. It's the stairwell. That Monday afternoon, sitting on the concrete 34 floors above the city, alone with a pen and a notebook. No one watching. No reward promised. Just a problem. And the belief that solving it mattered. That's where the real victory lived. In the stairwell. Before anyone knew. Here's what I want to know, and I want you to answer honestly. If someone laughed at your idea tomorrow, would you keep sketching? Or would you put the notebook away? Because the gap between having an idea and patenting it is your willingness to fail alone. It's your conviction that the quiet work matters even if no one sees it yet. Marcus had that. Most of us don't. But we could. Leave one word in the comments. Not what you should do. What you'd actually do. Subscribe so you don't miss the next person whose quiet work changed everything. Next week, the immigrant hospital cleaner whose crazy disease theory led to a vaccine. His name was written on a memorial plaque instead of a patent.